Is this the greatest Auburn basketball team of all time? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, let's get into it. The biggest game of the weekend, we had the Iron Bowl of basketball, round one. And number one Auburn defeated number two Alabama on Saturday evening, 94-85 in Coleman Coliseum. Auburn led by as many as 14. Bama came back to tie it up with under 8 minutes to go, but Auburn would pull away. A monster win for the Auburn Tigers, who improved to 23-2 overall in the season, 11-1 in SEC play. Johni Broome continues to be outstanding. 19 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks. Chad Baker-Mazara, he was banged up, came off the bench, still had 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists before he fouled out. Auburn shot 46% from the field, 40% from 3, only 4 turnovers for Auburn as a team. Meanwhile, Alabama, they shot just 38%, 19% from 3. Mark Sears led the way with 18 points, but he was 4 of 17 shooting. It was the first time in conference play a team has shot better than 40% from the field in Coleman Coliseum versus Alabama. I mean, it just felt like everything was going in. Every time Bama hit a big shot and the crowd gets up and got into it, Auburn would answer on the other end. This also marked the first home game in the Nate Oates era that Alabama never had a lead. I believe it's been something like 87 games under Nate Oates. Pretty incredible stuff. After the game, Bruce Pearl said, "We acted like we were the number one team. We prepared like we were the number one team. And we are the number one team." He said, "We're a good team," or "They're a good team." This is Nate Oates. He said, "They're a good team. We know that. They've proven to be the number one team in the country. We were not today." Now, Bruce Pearl is the first head coach to lead multiple schools to a victory in a number one versus number two game. Fans of SEC basketball, you'll remember the first program Bruce Pearl led to a victory at a 1 versus 2 matchup. It was when he was coaching at Tennessee back in 07-08. And that game was Bruce Pearl's number 2 Tennessee Vols going up against John Calipari's number 1 ranked Memphis team. Pearl saying after the game, "You walk into our locker room, and there's a sign that says, 'Make history.' These kids are never going to forget this 1 versus 2 matchup." I know this has been talked about throughout this season, but I just wanted to pose the question. Is this the best Auburn team of all time? Of course, the 98-99 team went 29-4, made it to the Sweet 16. Team that was led by Chris Porter, Scott Pullman, Doc Robinson. I believe that's the only time ever Auburn was a 1 seed, right? But they are in a great spot this season to do that for the second time ever, be a 1 seed. And what's crazy about this team, they lose Johni Broome for a couple games. Didn't matter. Chad Baker-Mazara banged up. Hasn't mattered. All the pieces on this team just gel, and they pick each other up, and they've been dominant. A close loss at Duke earlier this season and a home loss to Florida just 2 weeks ago where they missed a bunch of free throws. I mean, even before they even make the tournament, I think there's certainly a strong argument. It's the most talented Auburn team ever, but is it the best Auburn team ever? I think you make a case, but granted, look, if they get upset in the tournament and lose the first or second round, I mean, then where do you put them? But obviously, if this team goes on a deep run, I think they're absolutely right there as talking about the best Auburn team ever. Now, as for Alabama, where do they go from here? Nate Oates said after the game, "We're in full control of our destiny to at least get a tie in the league moving forward. We'll see what type of maturity and leadership we have." He said, we have 6 tough games. We have to be ready for every last one of them. Every goal we have remaining is still in our control. That has to be our mindset. No one feels good today. We just lost our arch rival. But how do we respond? Things get a little sticky now, too, with Texas A&M and Florida breathing down Alabama's neck, just one game back in the standings. And here's where the standings are right now. You got Auburn leading the SEC at 11-1. You got Alabama one game back at 10-2, and Auburn has the tiebreaker. A&M and Florida both there at 9-3, both 2 games back of Auburn. And then Mizzou is lurking at 8-4. They are 3 games back. And behind them, you got Tennessee and Ole Miss. They're both 8-5, so they're 3.5 back technically. And then there's a gap. After Kentucky lost to Texas, that drops them back to 6-6 in the conference. They're now even with Mississippi State in the standings, basically in the middle of the pack. Vandy's 5-7. Texas is 5-8. Arkansas 4-8. Georgia 4-9. And then Oklahoma, LSU, and South Carolina down at the bottom. So Bama's remaining schedule is absolutely brutal. I mean, you look at it, number 21, Mizzou, number 15, Kentucky, number 22, Mississippi State, at number 5, Tennessee, home versus number 3, Florida, and at number 1, Auburn to finish off the season. I just bring this up in that, look, I think this is a really good Bama team, but this remaining schedule, man, if they drop 1 or 2 more, there's a chance A&M or Florida jump them. It's a chance that Bama doesn't even finish in the top 2 in the SEC with a schedule that's brutal down the stretch. Now, we'll see what Auburn does. They got to take care of business. And again, these 2 teams do play each other again. So I saw our buddy Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn put out a video earlier. He said, wouldn't it be more ideal if Auburn could maybe clinch the SEC before that last game against Alabama? Well, yeah, obviously. But I think some Auburn fans would take delight in, man, wouldn't it be special if it came down to that game and you beat them again? I always say, though, don't tempt fate, right? You really want to go up against a Nate Oates coach team and go, yeah, let's make this where if we win the conference. If we lose, we don't. Like, I think you'd rather cinch this thing up sooner. But tip of the cap to Florida and A&M, man. I mean, A&M has won 5 in a row. Florida has won 4 in a row. And they're streaking. They are coming. They are both sending the message. Alabama and Auburn, yeah, you're clearly the 2 best teams in the conference so far this season. But we're going to have something to say about that. And I think you got to give credit to Buzz Williams and what a job he's done. Give credit to Todd Golden as well. I think A&M and Florida have both been very impressive. And, again, they're red hot. We'll see what happens. But monster win for Auburn. Again, congrats to Bruce Pearl and company. Big win. Everybody I know was tuned into this on Saturday, late Saturday afternoon into the evening. People I've talked to that aren't even big college basketball fans were tuned into it. So it was excellent entertainment. I had several people say, why is this not on ABC? It was like Duke versus somebody on ABC. But I think it was like Duke Stanford or something. But Bama Auburn was on ESPN. And honestly, it should have been the more national game. It should have been the game on ABC. But it is what it is. Everybody I know was tuned into this, and it lived up to it, man. I get it if you're an Alabama fan, you might say it didn't because you lost by a significant margin. But for them to fight back and make it a single digit or tie it with under 8 minutes to go was show great fight, but not enough shots hit and not enough defense on the other end against Alabama. But should be a good one, man. We'll see when these 2 teams meet again. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll talk a little bit more on some SEC hoops. That's coming your way in just a sec. First, I want to remind you guys about our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get signed up today. If you never signed up before, go check them out. It is FanDuel.com. Sign up and get your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Go make every moment more with FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. We'll have some more football topics as this week goes along, but today we're talking a little bit on SEC basketball, and the NCAA tournament action gets underway in a little over a month, and CBS did a special Saturday afternoon with representatives from the selection committee revealing an early look at where the bracket is right now as the season is winding down. And according to their projections, they've got the SEC grabbing 3 of the top 4 overall seeds in the field. Auburn took a number 1 overall seed in unanimous fashion, followed by Alabama, Duke, and Florida. So pretty interesting there that you could have 3 SEC teams all as 1 seeds. So basically how it shook out. In their South region in Atlanta, they had Auburn as the 1 seed, and A&M in there as a 6 seed. Midwest region, they had Alabama in as the number 2 seed, rather. Number 2 overall seed, I should say. Let me rephrase that. A&M is not a 6 seed. They're the 6th overall team. So they're a 2 seed. They had Tennessee in there at 5, Florida at 4, and then Kentucky in as 10. So the SEC led all conferences with 6 teams placed among the top 16 teams. So Tennessee and A&M both slotted as 2 seeds, and the conference claimed 5 of the selection committee's top 6 overall seeds. The SEC held 3 of the 4 number 1 seeds in the tournament bracket, and again, that would just be phenomenal if they were able to hang on to that. Right behind the SEC was the Big 12. They had 5 of their teams land inside the top 16, and the Big 10 had 3, while the ACC had just 1. Now, Selection Sunday will take place March 16th. The first 4 in Dayton will begin on March 18th and run through March 19th, and then first round action will begin across the country on March 20th. Now, the selection chairman committee, Bubba Cunningham, he talked about the race between Alabama and Auburn, and like we said, Auburn slated as a unanimous number 1 seed. Of course, with Auburn beating Alabama, that certainly helps strengthen Auburn's case even more as the top seed. And this was what Cunningham said ahead of the game on Saturday. He said, I don't think any single game is going to make a difference. Right now, we have Auburn as a unanimous choice. So, yeah, Alabama, they're going to play 2 more times. And the Alabama schedule they have in front of them is absolutely incredible. So the next month will really determine who is going to get that number 1 seed. Cunningham did note the Tide and Tigers set to meet again on March 8th, the final day of the regular season. And the Tide's schedule is absolutely grueling. Again, going to be some must-see TV down the stretch of the season. The SEC, they are seeking to become the 3rd conference ever to have 3 teams grab number 1 seeds in the same tournament. They would join the ACC in 2019, the Big East in 2009 in doing that. And by the way, if you're wondering, the record for most teams from one conference in a single NCAA tournament was when the old Big East got 11 in 2011. Now, Joe Lunardi's bracketology last week had the SEC getting 13 teams in. They even had Arkansas as the 14th team in the first 4 out category. So 13 teams into the tournament for the SEC would certainly be a conference record. So certainly something we'll keep an eye on, and just shows the power of the SEC. And what's kind of starting to happen here is when you start to talk about where everybody's ranked and Ken Palm and, is it a quad 1 win? Is it a quad 2 win? The SEC's ranked so high and so highly thought of right now that like the rest of your conference schedule is you're playing like really good teams. And so even if you lose to some of these really good teams, it's not going to ding you as much. But when you win, you add more wins to that quad 1, quad 2 tier, and it just is going to help strengthen your case even more. So it's just kind of funny. We used to get in this debate for years with SEC football, where it was like, well, they're all ranked. So like, when one loses to one, they don't drop out because it's considered a good win. Well, yeah, it's just the strength of the conference. And the SEC has certainly proved that this year in basketball. It's not like it's not earned. Like the SEC, nobody came into this year saying SEC basketball is hands down the best conference. Like we thought there was a chance for it to be, but they've proven it out on the court. They proved it in the non-conference games before the conference play started. And now we're starting to see some separation in conference play that is really, the Jimmies and the Joes, and separating the contenders from the pretenders and that sort of thing. One other note here, during a hit on SEC's or ESPN's College Game Day on Saturday morning, Pete Thamel, ESPN Insider, reported that discussions are ongoing to expand the NCAA tournament by as many as 8 more teams by 2026. The field has, of course, been 68 since 2011, was 64 for so many years, but they added the stupid first 4, which I don't like. I think it's kind of silly. It's, it's a chance for 4 more teams to say they made the tournament, but we don't even look at those games as quote unquote making the tournament. I'm sorry. It's just, it's silly. It's like, why are these teams being forced to play extra games? And really it should be, in all honesty, we have 16 seeds. It should, those 4 teams should all be considered basically 17 seeds in my mind, right? Like they should all be kind of, you're not in the tournament, you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and like you have to go win that one to earn your way in. That's kind of how I look at it. But here's what Pete Thamel said. He said, look, there's development behind the scenes about what this tournament could look like in 2026. NCAA President Charlie Baker is on record saying there have been discussions about growing this tournament to either 72 or 76 teams. I had multiple high-ranking sources tell me this week that the more likely option if the tournament were to expand would be to 76. He said the NCAA has been in discussions with its media partners for a while, and the decision on whether it goes to 76 or not will come in the next few months. He noted an addition of 8 teams to the tournament field would mark the largest expansion of the NCAA tournament since they doubled from 32 to 64 teams back in 1985. The logistics of what that would look like have not yet been set. An additional site for tournament games would be likely, with that site coming out of the Eastern time zone, is what he said. Now, in June of 2024, Ross Dellinger reported that NCAA officials presented Division I conference commissioners with multiple models for expanded tournament field, one that featured 72 teams and another that featured 76 teams. Baker told ESPN back then he was bullish on the prospect of expanding the tournament and that he engulfed in productive conversations with TV partners about the idea. Look, it's all about money, guys. I mean, this is where it's heading. It's not about, the field we're leaving so many good teams out. No, I mean, every year there are teams left on the bubble that, have a case, but certainly when you go look at it in the win-loss record, you go, at the end of the day, you didn't do enough to get in. That's what I always say. And adding those 4 more teams definitely makes the argument on you didn't do enough to get in. But going to 72 or 76, it's just, you're going to be putting in teams that are 500, basically, or maybe even some teams that are 1 game below 500 record-wise. And I think this kind of maybe goes back to the Big Ten and SEC pushing for, we got so many teams now. Look how big our conference is. We got to get more teams in. Let's make the field even bigger. This isn't going to help out, for instance, like the Big Sky, right? This isn't going to help out the Missouri Valley Conference where, Belmont got in, but Murray State got left out. Like, I don't think they're going to put this isn't going to help the smaller schools in my mind. This is about helping the bigger brands. This is about looking at it and going, okay, well, yeah, Vanderbilt's 5-7 in the SEC, but they're 17-8 overall. Arkansas is 4-8 in the conference. I know it's a bad conference record, but they're 15-10 overall. I'm just making a case, kind of saying like, you're going to have way more of those teams that would be sitting on the fence, just going, yeah, they're locks, put them in. And so, does that diminish the regular season a little bit more? Probably, because then it's not as dire, winning games. You just want to, if I could finish right below 500 in conference play, I know I can get into the tournament. Again, we'll see. This is just another one of those things with expanding the college football playoff. Now wanting to expand the NCAA tournament. It's just it's greed, it's money, it's hey, we can make more dollars on this, we can get more corporate sponsors, we can make more sites where fans can go buy tickets. Is it better for the game? Probably not. I mean, I was fine with 64 was plenty for me for the NCAA tournament. Then we went to 68. Now we could be going to 76. It's watering down the product. And I said this with the playoff games. I mean, we talked about some of those first round playoff games in college football. They were all blowouts. Yes, it was playoffs and stakes were high, but when they're blowouts, people turn the tile. They're turning the game off because it's like, I'm not watching Indiana get murdered by Notre Dame. So, again, we'll see where this goes, but not a fan. Put me in that column, but looks like we're headed that direction. We'll see. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC, part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And before we get out of here, did want to switch gears, talk a little football. We got some football news to jump into, so let's dive right into it. Texas A&M has made an adjustment to their football schedule for 2026. The Aggies are going to host Missouri State in 2026. The program's announced on Friday. That game will be played September 5th, 2026. So it'll be the first ever meeting between Missouri State and Texas A&M. And while Missouri State is currently an FCS program, that's going to change. They're going to join the ranks of the FBS in July 2025, and they will play in the Conference USA. It's a big step up for the Missouri State Bears. They have never competed before at the FBS level. Texas A&M still has one more opening on their non-conference slate in 2026, assuming the SEC stays at 8 conference games for that year. Aggies currently also slated to face Arizona State and Tarleton State, in addition to Missouri State that year. But A&M's got some pretty good non-conference opponents coming up. Of course, they're going to get Notre Dame again this year, the return trip up to South Bend. They'll do a home-and-home with Arizona State in 26 and 27, and then a home-and-home with Louisville in 28 and 29. Other football news, Florida secondary coach Will Harris is leaving Gainesville for a role with Miami. Harris was with Florida for just a year as he joined the program in December 2023 after working for the Los Angeles Chargers. So significant loss in that secondary for Florida. He did improve their pass defensive efficiency rating from 149 to 124 in running that secondary. Florida's ranking in that category in the SEC also jumped from 13th up to 9th. Now, a report came out yesterday that they are set to hire Duron Wilson. He is going to return to Gainesville. He is spent 2022 with the Gators before spending the last 2 seasons with Arkansas, coaching their secondary. So Duron Wilson coming back to Florida, and he will coach the secondary there. Meanwhile, some news of a former LSU assistant, Matt House, the former maligned LSU defense coordinator, is expected to land with the Kansas City Chiefs as a senior defensive analyst. House previously worked with Kansas City, was a member of their Super Bowl winning team in 2019. Spent last season with the Jaguars coaching their linebackers. But he is going to head back to the Kansas City Chiefs. So Brian Kelly chose to part ways with Matt House and multiple other defensive staffers after that 2023 season. Remember when Jaden Daniels was spectacular and won the Heisman, but their defense couldn't get a stop, and so they lost a couple of games? Yeah, that had to change. And so wish Matt House the best of luck going, stay in the NFL, going to another NFL spot. All right, over at Georgia, safety Dan Jackson was not named among the 329 players who were invited to the NFL scouting combine on Thursday. It was a surprising decision. Jackson was a multi-year contributor with the Bulldogs, was a top player on their defense this year. According to Pro Football Focus, he played over 700 snaps. It's the third most on the Georgia defense behind only Malachi Starks and Dalen Everett. Posted a career-high 64 tackles this season. Also collected 2 tackles for a loss, 2 picks, 3 pass deflections. Called him Dirty Dan. Former walk-on, was a member of 2 national championship teams there in Athens. His teammate Warren Brinson was among those who was surprised by Jackson being left off the list. But Georgia will be very well represented at the combine. More than a dozen players from their 2024 roster made the cut, including players like Starks, Dominic Lovett, Tate Ratledge. Jackson will still have the opportunity to get drafted. He'll partake in or he took place in the Senior Bowl, obviously, and he'll have his pro day at Georgia. But Scouting Combine will get started here in a couple of days, February 27th through March 2nd, but no Dan Jackson. Just surprising there. A little surprising. In some SEC baseball news, for those of you who watched over the weekend, was a lot of fun to watch all the action happening out there. But I saw a note, LSU, their pitchers logged 45 strikeouts in their opening series. That's the most in over 3 decades. Most for an LSU pitching staff in a series since 1992. LSU did sweep Purdue Fort Wayne. Not 17 strikeouts in Friday's win. And then, like I said, finished with 45 strikeouts on the weekend. Now, Baseball America, they put out their updated college top 25 rankings Monday morning. And here's how it shakes out. You got Texas A&M at number 1, LSU at number 2, Tennessee at number 3, Arkansas at number 4. So a little top heavy on the SEC. Florida comes in at number 6. So that's the top 4 from the SEC, 5 of the top 6 from the SEC. Then you go down a little bit. We got Georgia at number 11. We got Texas at number 12. Vanderbilt at number 13. Mississippi State at number 16. And Kentucky sneaks in there at number 23 overall. So first weekend of the season. I mean, yeah, walk-offs, elite pitching performances, big time just mashing home runs and whatnot. But there's your top 25. A&M 1, LSU 2, Tennessee 3, Arkansas 4, Florida 6, Georgia 11, Texas 12, Vandy 13, Mississippi State 16, and Kentucky 23. I was a little thrown off because Baseball America uses the old school logos, so it's like you see an A and it's like, wait, is that Bama? No, that's the Arkansas script A. But nonetheless, it was a fun weekend of SEC baseball. We'll keep you guys up to date with some tidbits on that. Softball's having a fun start to the year as well. So we'll get into some news and notes on that as we roll along. Hey, later this week, we're going to get into, I got multiple football topics we got to get into. We got to get an update from Alabama camp on where their probably the most asked question I've had when I go around SEC circles the last couple of weeks. People are asking, hey, who do you think Alabama's quarterback's going to be? It's going to be Keelan Russell. It's going to be Austin Mack. It's going to be Ty Simpson. So we're going to get some of our Bama folks on to discuss that because it's one of the big burning topics as we get ready to head into spring ball here. So we'll discuss that. Also need to take Greg Byrne to task on something that he said about rushing the field, rushing the court. We're going to get to that in tomorrow's show. And then we'll also need to discuss a little bit on Ross Dellinger's piece that he just put out today. Within the Big Ten and SEC, momentum builds for an expanded playoff with multiple automatic qualifiers per league. SEC and Big Ten are going to have a joint meeting, and the industry is closer than ever to a new CFP reimagined league title games, 9-game SEC schedule, and a Big Ten SEC scheduling package where they'll play each other in the non-con, and then you're getting multiple automatic bids from both the SEC and the Big Ten to make the playoff. We'll discuss more on it later this week. I'm not a huge fan of going this route, but I get why they're doing it. Greg Sankey saying most money. Let's partner with the Big Ten. We've got the most power, and let's do this thing hand in hand, working together. Again, we'll discuss it throughout the week. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. And hey, for your second listen, you can check out Locked On Sports Today, talking all the biggest stories, national stories, 24/7 streaming on YouTube, and also available in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Come on back.